This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Wheel of Fate. Wheel of Fate in Edinburgh, Scotland is a cozy little witch shop where you can learn to make your own besom broom, bind a spellbook, or spin wool into yarn. There you can find local art inspired by heritage crafts, the natural world, and regional myths and folklore. I love Scottish magic and mythology, and at Wheel of Fate, they believe that there is magic in the creative arts, and they want to share that magic with you. So go ahead and visit wheeloffate.co.uk to book a workshop or learn more. Hello, my friend. I am often asked about how people can get even more witch wave and more magic in their lives overall. And I have the answer. You can join me over on the Witch Wave Patreon. This is how you can hear from me and my other magical guests on a weekly basis via my Witch Wave Plus bi-weekly bonus episodes. And you get the regular Witch Wave episodes ad-free, and you get detailed show notes for all of it. And all Patreon members also get access to my monthly ritual workshops, which you can attend live or watch the recording of at your leisure throughout the month. Rewards for some tiers also include magical merch and contests where you can win witchly prizes, as well as early heads up about my workshops before they sell out, and opportunities to work with me one-on-one. And all backers get access to our exclusive digital coven, where you can connect to a community of other wonderful Witch Wave witches around the world. So head on over to patreon.com/witchwave and sign up. It's a magnificent way to get more magic in your life and to support the show. Thank you so much.
The world is filled with bewitching people, and you might be one too. Welcome to the podcast where art is magic is real, and reality is stranger than dreams. I'm Pam Grossman, and this is The Witch Wave.
Hello and welcome to the Witch Wave. Happy New Year 2025. Time to thrive. And look, I know that might seem challenging to do right now, given the state of the world and here in America with the impending regime change we're about to get in Washington. So I'm not out here trying to pretend that everything is just peachy keen. But I am determined this year and beyond to focus on what I'm able to affect. And that includes the art and the work and the magic that I make. It includes the community that I'm part of and the beauty and love that I'm able to generate and appreciate. This year, I've got a new book coming out in October called Magic Maker, which is all about the relationship between creativity and magic. And I'm determined to really practice what I priestess and be more courageous in my creative output and more imaginative with my magic. And also to spending more time with others who are committed to doing the same. There will absolutely be moments of despair and anger and fatigue and fear. Of course there will. And it's important that we give ourselves time to feel those things when they come up. But I refuse to give up. I refuse to shrink or silence myself. And I absolutely refuse to let the greedy fascist bullies win. And the way to do that, the way to resist, is to continue to use our imaginations, our power, our resources, our creativity, and our love, and point those in the directions of the people and things and beings we care about. And we cannot do it alone. And so that's why I'm so grateful for the community that we've built here on the Witch Wave and via the Witch Wave Patreon. And I'm so grateful that I get to speak with people like today's guest, Astraleyes, who is an artist and publisher who is committed to building weird, witchy, wildly kind community as well. And I know that this conversation was meant to happen and meant to happen now because of some synchronicities that occurred, which affirmed this for me. And let me tell you about them. So first, I was originally supposed to have an astrologer on today's episode, as I often do for the first episode of the year. But that astrologer in question got quite sick at recording time, and it became clear that the episode as planned was not meant to be. And look, that happens from time to time, but it's especially challenging to have that happen during the holidays, which is what happened in this case, because of course that's when people are extra busy, and it is a more challenging time to find a replacement. And so I admit I was scrambling to figure out who this alternative guest would be. And at first I was feeling a little bit stressed out about it because, look, I always put a lot of thought and consideration into who is on the show all year long. But the first episode of the year is very important to me because I intend for it to set the tone for the entire year. So I was feeling a little stressed, feeling a little tense, but then I just surrendered to Spirit and I said, "Hey, Spirit, I trust you. I trust that this is happening for a reason. Please show me who is meant to be my first guest of the year. Please clear the pathway. Please make this person's identity clear." And lo and behold, after I asked for this bit of magical help, I get a DM on Instagram from Astraleyes. Now, this is someone whose art and books I've admired for years, and we've been in touch a little bit over the years from time to time. And he was reaching out to me to let me know that he had a Kickstarter launching soon for his project. And I said, "Hey, man, since you've reached out and since this Kickstarter is launching in January, how would you like to be a guest on the Witch Wave? I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time, and this feels like potentially stars aligning, and you can spread the word about your project. And P.S., can you record on the Monday morning before Christmas?" And bless him, bless whatever loved ones he had to coordinate with, bless Spirit, bless stars aligning to make it so, because Astraleyes said yes, and we had this marvelous conversation, and we did indeed record it that Monday before Christmas, which is a crazy time to try to do such a thing. So I'm just very, very grateful that it all worked out. But if that wasn't enough, cut to New Year's Eve. Matt and I go to our friend's New Year's Eve party at their apartment, and, we have a lovely time. And just as we're leaving, one of the hosts pulls me aside and says, "By the way, I have something for you." And he goes into his bedroom and he comes out holding a book. And he says, "I saw this book in a shop recently and I just had to buy it for you." And this book was none other than a copy of Spellbound, which Astraleyes has put out. And it's one of the books that we discuss on this very episode. And of course, I lost my mind and I said to my friend, dude, I just interviewed this guy a couple days ago. The episode is coming out in a week. This is so crazy. What an amazing synchronicity. So anyway, it was just a lovely affirmation from Spirit. And as you'll hear, Astraleyes' bright energy and inspiring story about his own evolution as a magical maker is so uplifting and mystical. And I truly can't imagine a better way to kick off 2025. But before we get to that, first, let's check and see what's come through on the Witch Wire.
Who is it?
Witches.
Holly writes, "Hi, Pam. First, I want to say thank you for your incredible podcast. I've been listening over the past few years as I've grown more fully into my magic, and I love hearing all of the different perspectives and magical guests that you bring onto the show. The main reason I'm writing is to thank you for advocating for mental health therapy on your podcast and being vulnerable and sharing your own experiences with therapy. Speaking our truth is one of the most magical things we can do. It is a truly alchemical process that we have used since we've had language to express our inner world to those around us. I am a mental health therapist who specializes in trauma, and over the years, I have committed myself to serving as a vessel for others to express their inner workings in a safe space where their emotions, thoughts, and experiences can be held, validated, and nurtured without judgment. I have also engaged in therapy myself for the past 10 years or so and have seen undeniable magic come through this process of transformation. My main area of focus is trauma because my roots were formed in trauma, and I spent much of my young life trying to manage the damage of that root system. It has only been in the past 8 years or so that I've been able to truly embark on the work of healing the roots I can and pruning those that were no longer viable. Through this journey, I've had to come to the understanding that much of the damage in my root system was in fact not mine to hold anymore, as it had been passed down to me from many generations prior. All this to say, it can seem daunting to look at our systems of origin and try to untangle all the webs of dysfunction that we originated from in this earthly form. But starting with ourselves in therapy with a professional can be the key to a truer understanding of our authentic self, as well as a clearer view of the web from which we came. I truly appreciate your advocacy for the healing of the self through therapeutic engagement. Thank you for your lovely work in magic and mental health advocacy." Hi, Holly. Wow. Thank you for being such a thoughtful listener of the show. And thank you for writing an equally thoughtful note and sharing a bit of your own mental health journey, both as a therapist and as someone who has received therapy. And also thank you for the work that you do. I'm so delighted to hear that there are therapists out there who engage in, quote unquote, traditional therapy, but who are also open to magic. And for me, that has been such an incredible combination. And it sounds like it has been for you too. And I really found myself nodding along as I was first reading your note because it feels like you and I have come to a lot of the same conclusions about mental health. And we've both landed on the fact that our emotional lives, our spiritual lives, and our intergenerational relationships are all deeply interconnected. And that's why I think it's so important that in our healing journeys, we address all of these different aspects and try to integrate them. And you know what? I'll add our embodied lives to that list as well, because as we know, what we eat and how we move and rest and sleep is a big component of our well-being too. For me, witchcraft has a lot of benefit that is, I'll call it, tonifying. It's a tonic. It has helped me become stronger and more resilient and has helped me engage with my spirit and with the spiritual world overall. And that impacts my mental health in really positive ways because it is grounded in other modalities, including traditional therapy. Traditional therapy has helped me metabolize a lot of the trauma that I've experienced, and it's also helped me develop skills to emotionally regulate and better care for myself and, by extension, others. And I'm really fortunate in that my current therapist, like you, is very spiritually open. And so I'm able to bring my witch self into my therapy sessions. And sometimes, even though my therapist isn't a witch herself, she'll encourage me to pull a card or two when I have a decision to make or need a spiritual perspective on something, because she knows that divination is one of the many modalities that is helpful for me. And it's a way that I make meaning in my own life. And then, yes, in addition to all of that, the last 4 years of ancestor work that I've been doing has been this whole other layer to my well-being and my family's healing, on top of all the talk therapy and emotional processing that I've been doing. Because I've been able to incorporate my ancestors into my ritual work. And in doing so, I believe that we're healing each other, because time is a holographic dimension. And somehow when we engage with our lineage in mindful, love-led ways, we're able to offer release and acknowledgement and gratitude and forgiveness and love to those who came before us. And they're able to help guide and protect and support us here in the present. And look, I do not know how it exactly works. I just know that it does. And so I am thrilled that you've found therapy to be a key part of your own healing and the ways in which you help others heal themselves. And that it's also a part of your own magic and your own spiritual way of engaging with the world. And I hope that people are inspired by hearing that, and that they then feel empowered to consider traditional therapy as part of their own healing and spiritual offering and practices as well. Now, on to my guest. Astraleyes is an occult collage artist, archivist, and curator. He is also the publisher of Bibliomancers, which is an independent press dedicated to exploring vintage print design and its ties to cultural movements, with a special focus on the esoteric. Through Bibliomancers, Astraleyes seeks to uncover the connections between historical design, mysticism, and the hidden stories within visual culture. The Bibliomancers series has 5 books and counting, from Spellbound, which is a book of images of vintage witchcraft paperback covers, and it is so irresistible, I can't even tell you, to his newest book, Occult Eye, which focuses on imagery and ephemera from the new religious or New Age movement. Each tome is a celebration of pop occulture and an archive of the ways in which occult iconography has shapeshifted over time. Astraleyes also has a massive following on Instagram under his handle @Astraleyes, Astraleyez, where he posts tons of his favorite vintage occult imagery. And you can also follow his Bibliomancers book series via his handle @Bibliomancers. Astraleyes joined me remotely from his home in LA. Astraleyes, welcome to the Witch Wave.
Thank you for having me, Pam.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. And listeners don't get the benefit of seeing your face right now, but I am so excited because I've always wondered, who is Astraleyes? Who is this mysterious person? What did they look like? I knew so little about you, even though I've been a fan of your artwork and now your books for such a long time. So thanks for unmasking yourself for me, at least.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. I've been a huge fan of you as well. I'm excited to meet you.
Thank you. So let's start actually maybe with your identity as Astraleyes. Where did that moniker come from? What made you decide that that was how you wanted to present your work and your different projects? Just what's the origin of Astraleyes?
Well, I was in Chicago around 2001, and I was working this crazy job. I guess a little bit about myself, too. I should say that I was raised Greek Orthodox, very centered around iconography. I had an art practice that my mother was a printmaker, and she instilled in me.
Oh, cool.
I kind of had a meltdown and moved to Chicago and was living this very normal life. And I discovered Photoshop in 2001 and started messing around with that, doing some collages. And I really wanted more out of my life at that time.
How old were you?
Oh, God. In early 20s, maybe 20, 21 maybe. And I started hitting the bookshops. I'd always been a book collector. So I started discovering these old, dusty occult bookshops in Chicago.
Yes.
And started picking up random weird paperbacks. And I got my first set of Man, Myth, and Magic then.
The best. The best.
Yeah, deep dive into that. And I started scanning stuff in and making collages. And at that time, MySpace was really big.
Oh, R.I.P. MySpace.
Yeah, R.I.P. MySpace.
Remember when the internet was cool? I mean, I know there's still good aspects to it. You and I wouldn't be talking now without it, but my goodness, there was a real golden age, wasn't there?
It certainly was. It was the Wild West almost.
Yeah.
And MySpace really opened these doors for me. And I started sharing my collages I was making. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to be this old self. I want something new. I want this new self. Actually, the name I created then was Owleyes. I started sharing my collages and not putting any images of myself because I wanted a new self. And that started attracting people from all around the world. And I started developing a real community. And the core of that community was in Los Angeles. So that was the kind of birth of the Owleyes project, was this sort of digital iconography that I was sending out into the ether, almost like astral travel, and putting out these new roots that I wanted to really cultivate.
Oh, I love that. And just for the benefit of listeners who might not have seen your work yet, can you describe it in a little more detail?
Sure. How would I describe it?
I know it's always such a challenge to interpret a visual medium into an auditory one, but I think it's a good one, actually. So
yeah. I mean, I've heard people call me a psychedelic icon maker. So I would basically start with traditional iconography. I would have like a figure, and then I would build around it. I would build an altar around it, making these digital altar spaces. I would incorporate a lot of stuff that you wouldn't associate with the occult.
Okay.
So I would have, some old beat up Buick Regal pulled from a magazine next to some floral arrangement that I pulled from a flower book, and some maybe like a Martha Stewart image.
Well, she's a total icon. Come on. Definitely a demigoddess.
Absolutely.
At the least.
So it would be this kind of hodgepodge of objects that you wouldn't associate with each other. I would then formulate into an altar.
That's so cool. And were these images that you were making as Owleyes, did they have specific names? Like, were you naming them after certain gods or goddesses, or were you inventing your own gods or goddesses or deities?
All of the above. I did a lot of wordplay too. So I looked at these as spells.
Yes.
The whole process is what Marcel would call like the sacred and the profane, So there's this earnest energy that I'm trying to expel and deal with, pulling new realities into my sphere. But then I'm also contending with what the art world is. It's attracting art world people to me. And so I started playing around with that element too. One of the pieces I called that actually got turned into a snowboard, oddly enough, was Abracadabbler.
I love that phrase. It's so good. I might have to borrow that, with credit to you, of course, but it's so good.
That's kind of what I feel like. At least at that time, there was a lot of energy where it didn't feel sure. People were calling themselves witches, or they were using these elements. And I was like, well, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you pull into your sphere.
Be careful what you witch for.
Exactly. And if you're not prepared, it can send you off into the, neither regions.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my iconography and the work I was making at the time was just me dealing with my own navigational tools that I was trying to develop at the time to prepare me for this experience that I was to have.
Okay. Ooh, that's a good cliffhanger. Before we get to this experience that you are to have, where did you sort of devise this methodology of making, we'll call them visual spells? Was this intuitive? You mentioned your mom, you mentioned Greek orthodoxy. Like, how did you develop this process?
It really was a combination of growing up in the Greek church and surrounded by icons and the power that culture gives to these images.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mother being a printmaker and exposing me to art at such an early age. And I really kind of latched on to the Dadaists and the Surrealists.
Yeah.
And Hoke was a big influence for me. And
I love her.
she's amazing. Her and Max Ernst and Leonore Carrington. And so at this early age, I was really exposed to like Kurt Schwitter's and other elements of collecting images, but then reformatting them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sort of clicked with the icons that I was surrounded by all the time.
Yeah. I don't know too much about the Greek Orthodox Church. Can you, for my benefit and any listeners who don't have that foothold, maybe talk a little bit about what is specific to that upbringing versus more, we'll call it just like Protestant or American Catholic, or I guess we would say like Roman Catholic or Irish Catholic or what have you?
First of all, I should say I don't have that practice. I mean, I was never very religious currently. So for me, what it really signified was it's all ritual. It has a lot of elements to Catholicism where you have the grandiose, like pageantry, and you have the visualization, the smell. You have a lot of incense burning all the time. You have these things that kind of strip down the outside world and create this new fabrication of a more of a religious or connectivity to God, I guess. So you have these sensory elements that are really major components to it.
And are there saints as well?
Oh, yeah. There are lots of saints involved.
Okay.
In it as well.
Okay. So when we're talking iconography, we're talking about those kinds of images. So like figurative pictures of the divine.
Right. Exactly. A lot of them have a picture of a saint, but then it'll have really intricate hammered gold or silver around it. So it is almost like a collage element coming through.
Oh, how gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming then you're at least part Greek or Greek.
Part Greek, yeah.
Yeah. And so did you have a relationship to like ancient Greek mythology and deities and gods and goddesses too, or not quite?
Growing up, I really didn't, but I have since really honed in on getting to those roots and studying more of the old world religion of the Greek mythology. So that has been something I've been interested in.
How cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you are. You're in Chicago. And forgive me, I don't know if I asked you where you grew up, because it sounds like you went to Chicago in your 20s.
Yeah, I grew up in Houston, Texas.
Oh, cool. Okay. So you went straight up the country. You're now going north to Chicago. You're in your 20s. You're making work as Owl Eyes. And then it sounds like you had some kind of experience. And I'm curious when you became Astraleyes. So what came next?
Well, I should say, too, like one of the things that really influenced me and had a big impact on my practice now is in my early teens, I started experimenting with LSD and other psychedelics.
Heard of it.
also coupled with a friend of mine gave me a copy of Secret Teachings of All Mankind.
Oh, hell yeah. Manly P. Hall with those
Yeah,
amazing J. Augustus Knapp illustrations. Come on.
right? So
Yes.
that combo, and then at the time too, to also date me, Twin Peaks was on television. So
Come
yeah,
on. You're speaking my language, my friend. That's a hell of a combination. My goodness. Psychedelics, Manly P. Hall, and David Lynch and Mark Frost. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
so it kind of fried my brain, and I started thinking like, wait a minute, this television is not a television show. These are encoded messages. I need to decipher this other language that's coming through. There's not a whole lot going on in Houston at the time, too. So I'm wandering around, walking around the streets with this, David Lynchian map of reality in my brain. I'm on LSD. I've been reading the Secret Teachings. And then these things just start happening to me on the street while I'm walking, and some stranger will come up to me and he'll say something cryptic, and he'll hand me like part of a ripped book, and it'll have some code or something in there that I have to decipher. So this is going on for pretty much my entire teenage years.
Whoa. Okay.
And I'm just like started making a lot of collage art then, and I'm trying to process reality, and it just gets really shaky, and a friend of mine, well, the person I was dating was like, you got to get out of this town. You're losing your mind.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the name Owl Eyes, is that a reference to the owls are not what they seem, like a David Lynch wink?
Looking back now, it most certainly was. At the time, I was just pulling from the ether. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally connected to that.
How cool. Okay, so then you moved to Chicago. So Owl Eyes is your kind of magical name, your artistic name or container
Right.
you're working with. And
Right.
then when does Astraleyes come into the picture?
Around 2006, my mother got sick and died pretty dramatically.
I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. That grief really set everything up. And just through the 7 years that I had been sort of away from that mania and from my art practice, I had been living a normal life. It all came kind of rushing back. And that's when I started really pushing out all the collage that I had been making onto the internet, finding that community, connecting to them. And it's brought me to Los Angeles. And that's where I immediately found the Philosophical Research Society through a friend of mine.
The best.
Yeah, Maja Dao was lecturing there at the time. And she
I
had
know
these.
Maja.
Yeah, she's incredible. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that connection. So that community really helped save my life. And it was incredible. At that time, Jody Willie was part of that element.
She's a friend too. She's been on the show. She's the best. So, you know who else was on the show is, I don't know if you've crossed paths with Ron Rigi Jr. Do you know one another?
Yeah, Ron was part of Maja's class that we were all part of.
So awesome.
Yeah.
I love knowing the origin story of this community too. That's so cool. All those like interconnections.
Absolutely.
There you are in LA and you're part of this community. You're making work and something made you shift identities at some point, right? What did that look like?
Well, I realized that this Owl Eyes project was really me dealing with the grief of my mother and finding my magic community, finding my people. And once I found them, I was like, well, it's time to leave that grief-fueled art behind and start, setting the next level, I guess.
Mm.
And that's where the Astraleyes came through. This more of, let's delve deeper into the practice and, what I've been studying this whole time.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm very moved by this. On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This season of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. For 20 years, indie scent artist Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, known affectionately as BPAL, has been formulating perfume oils for each month's full moon, inspired by their colorful names and descriptions in historical almanacs. 2025 will be no exception. Look for their monthly launches called A Little Lunacy, which include not only these limited edition scents for fellow lunatics, but also an ongoing series of perfumes inspired by classical artworks, and some which raise funds for a variety of charitable causes. The lab's general catalog is teeming with perfume oils, hair gloss sprays, beard oils, and bath oils, which can be yours year-round, covering a truly bewildering range of scent types and inspirations that include cinema, gothic literature, and occultism. To that end, BPAL recently brought back a recurring scent series called An Evening with the Spirits, drawing from legends and historical accounts of Victorian-era spiritualism. These haunting scents, such as Psychodynamic Discharge and the Fox Sisters, will remain in Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab's web shop well into 2025. Month by month, year by year, the lunacy continues at blackphoenixalchemylab.com. The Witch Wave is sponsored by BetterHelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? I love the magic of January because it is such a powerful time to set intentions for what I want to manifest in the new year and what story I want to tell all year long. Every January brings you 365 blank pages just waiting to be filled. Maybe you're ready for a plot twist in your life, or maybe there's a part of your story that you've been wanting to revise. Life isn't about resolutions that fade by February. It's about picking up the pen and becoming the author of your own life. And you can think of therapy as your editorial partner, helping you write new chapters and creating the meaningful story that you deserve to live. My therapist has become absolutely instrumental in helping me set intentions for goals I want to achieve and skills I want to develop to help me write my own story. And therapy has helped me be accountable to myself because my therapist is bearing witness to my goals and helping me strategize how I can apply emotional tools and magical energy toward helping me reach my dreams and helping that story of mine become reality. I cannot recommend therapy more highly. I've said it a million times. I wish everyone on earth would go to therapy. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is entirely online, which makes therapy affordable and convenient, and they serve over 5 million people worldwide. You can access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties, and it's easy to switch therapists at any time at no extra cost. So if you don't have a good fit with the first person you try, that's okay. There's another one of the 30,000 that will be a better fit for you, no doubt. So go on ahead, write your story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/witchwave today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/witchwave. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. Today I'm speaking with Astraleyes. So there you are in LA. You've kind of conjured for yourself this magical community. And I find it really moving that our artwork and our magic can kind of be like a ship in a bottle, or maybe a message in a bottle is a better way of putting it, that we cast it out into the universe. And sometimes it brings to us then kindred spirits. And it sounds like that's what was happening for you, right?
Absolutely, Pam. You nailed it. I also see like the modern age version of this ship in the bottle is social media.
Mm-hmm.
And things like MySpace, and currently for me, Instagram has become that. I know you know this, but for your listeners, I have basically surrounded myself with books. I live with books. Books are my life now. They always have been, but now they're really a major component to how I process the world. So I'll go through a stack of books using my personal bibliomancy method, and I'll pull, 7 to 10 images out a day and share them on Instagram. And I've been doing this for, I don't know, since 2014, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just created this amazing community just on there of like-minded individuals. And actually, one of your guests, I was listening to some of your shows, Stephen Elcott, too. I feel like he's a very kindred spirit, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Have you guys been in touch at all?
Yeah, we have communicated. Like I said, social media is this. I think we've been friends since not quite MySpace days, but around that. It's been a while. We've been in each other's spheres. So
that's so cool. So let's pivot to the books because, I'm seeing you on my screen now. You're surrounded by towers of books. And your new project and the new sort of iteration of what you're doing and who you are is this new book project.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us about the new name and tell us about how that project started and what it is exactly?
Sure. So I have a small press here in Los Angeles called Bibliomancers, and bibliomancy is almost like tarot. You're basically using books for a divination source.
Yep.
Any method works. You can just pull a random book and think of whatever information you need or whatever answer you need, and you just open to a random page. Or for my personal practice, it's surrounding myself with mountains of books and then sort of doing the pulling out of the ether, essentially. So with the Bibliomancy publishing project, rather than sharing all the images online and creating this digital community, I wanted to bring things back offline and start sharing these curated elements of my collection in a more analog, old school, tangible way to get people off the internet to experience these relics, I guess, in the old fashion.
Yeah. And just to be a little more specific, you're starting to put these books out that are essentially collections of vintage occult paperbacks.
Right.
It's like a book of books, a book of book covers, or now several books of book covers. And so when I think of this kind of like golden age of mass market paperbacks in terms of the occult, I'm thinking we're in the 1970s. Is that right? Maybe a bit of the 60s too? Or am I getting that wrong?
No, you nailed it. It started in the late 60s, and in popular culture, there was this occult explosion. We had a lot of made-for-television movies that were coming out, influenced by occult practices. And this anomaly started coming out where mass-market paperbacks were just someone discovered they could make some money on witches. And they just...
Yes.
The floodgates opened, and now all of a sudden everything had some witch component to it. You had How to Be a Sensuous Witch, which was just basically a glorified recipe book, but it had one of the most sensational covers of that era on there.
Absolutely. Maybe you could describe it to listeners. I love this book cover.
It's incredible. There's basically this beautiful young woman. She's in all black. She's got this very power pose that she's sitting, and she's in a magic circle with a cauldron by her, and she's just totally in charge of everything.
Oh, yeah. Total babe as well. And I feel like a lot of these covers, what appeals to me about them is they subvert the idea of the witch as like the ugly old crone, which I love the ugly old crone. I really do. But I love the fact that the witch has all these different faces. The archetype of the witch is very shape-shifting and reflects all these different, as I often say, our fears and our fantasies about feminine power.
Yes.
But I love that there's this explosion of like sexy witches. And, there's, of course, always a shadow side to that stuff and who's making the images and the male gaze and da-da-da-da-da. But I don't know. I just think they're a hoot. Like a lot of these images are a hoot. And for listeners who might not be aware, Wicca really starts to explode in the, 1950s.
Mhm.
But in the 60s and 70s, we see a lot of these images and a lot of these books of people who are practicing what was a very new religion. It was purporting to be old, but it was a very new religion, and it was super sexy. I mean, Wicca, when we're talking about like Gerald Gardner and then a lot of the people like,
Marie Valente and
yeah, and like Stuart and Janet Farrar. These are people who were like getting together and getting naked and thinking of sex as a sacred rite. Some of it was kind of kinky. There were people tying each other up sometimes.
yeah,
But it was very much this idea that like you could have a high priestess alongside the high priest, and the goddess was equal to the horned god. And that's pretty radical. I understand it's very heteronormative now and very gender essentialist, and we're evolving beyond that. But at the time, it was fucking radical, right?
absolutely.
And I find that really delightful and appealing just on its face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It was something too to think about it in the context of, these books were available at the checkout line of the supermarket.
Yeah.
Traditionally, you'd have the housewife at the checkout line buying groceries for the week for her family. And here she's confronted with this, Wicca empowerment, sexy witch book. Hey, this is waiting for you. There's other things out there. Take your power,
Yeah.
next to the tabloids or something. So it's,
That's right. Have you seen the film Season of the Witch? It used to be called Jack's Wife. Yeah.
yeah, the George Romero, absolutely.
Yes. And this is a movie that to me, and I should say for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, trigger warnings. There's definitely like some sexual abuse. And I mean, there's like a really shitty husband
Oh, yeah.
at the beginning that this housewife has to overcome. And she does so, spoiler alert, by becoming a witch, essentially.
A badass witch. Yeah.
A badass witch. I don't even know if I'd consider it a horror movie. It's kind of like a sexual
No.
occult thriller or something,
Yeah.
or sexual occult psychodrama. I don't know.
Drama.
It's so good. And I feel like it really encapsulates the spirit of what you're talking about. This idea like you don't have to be a 1950s obedient housewife anymore. You can be a witch.
Right.
You can come into your own power. And yes, some of that is sexual, right?
Absolutely.
So these book covers and these books, there's like a real proliferation of them in the 70s. Did you start collecting them in real time back then? Or is this something you came to later in life kind of retrospectively?
I first became aware of these as a teenager, but I didn't really start collecting until I got to Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At that time in Chicago, no one was going after this stuff. I was like a pig in shit, as they say. And that's when it really kind of got to the point where it's like, oh, there's something going on here. And it wasn't until recently where I started seeing like, hey, this hasn't really been shared in the culture. I mean, you have these beautiful books that Jess Hunley is putting out with Toshin for exploring all these different avenues of art and magic. And,
Yeah, I got to do it with her, the witchcraft book we did together.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She's phenomenal.
She is.
You have a lot of, like what Steve Alcott is doing with his books. You have all these books dedicated to the ancient text and these old manuscripts. And I was like, there's something missing. And it's the modern contextualization of this ancient craft and the exploitation of it.
Mm-hmm.
Through this corporatization and through the commodification of this, and it comes back to the sacred and the profane. It's the same thing that I've been chasing, where it's this connectivity to source, it's this empowering of your higher self, but then it's also this bastardization, commodification, like corporatization of these real magical elements. So that's the thing where I'm really hasn't really been any survey of that. So I was like, oh, I have the majority of these. So I started putting these books together as themes.
Yeah.
It started with the Spellbound, and then that led to the Gothic romance book I put out.
I love that one.
That is another thing where it's like, it was aimed at this trapped housewife element, and it was women running from a dark castle. And it was just, a lot of them had supernatural elements and these witchcraft elements to it, where the woman was being held captive by this domineering aggro male, and then she would break free from some supernatural element, developing some, sense of herself through these catastrophic things that would happen to her. So I was like, these are also tied into the witchcraft explosion of the 70s, I feel.
Yeah. Maybe you can take us through what were the other books that followed. So you had the Spellbound book, which I just love this book. This is a book of images of these like covers of these paperback witch books of the 70s. Lots of amazing images of scantily clad badass babes doing magic, casting circles. There's quite a lot of like wizards and warlocks and diabolical images too. And it's just a hoot, but it's also really beautiful and lurid. And it's just a trip. I love just flipping through this book. So next was the Gothic romance one, correct? And what was that one called exactly?
The full title was The Spectral Vision of Gothic Romance.
Gorgeous. And then what came next?
So then we had Mask Garden.
Mask Garden. That's all about masks, right?
Well, it's more about this almost a body horror element to it.
Yes.
And a lot of these books were mostly UK editions, and they are just paper mache human representations that just don't quite stick. So a lot of it is almost like what were they thinking kind of horror element to it. It's this absurdity to it. And I should say that I started this project with a longtime companion and friend of mine, Eric Nordhauser, who was also pivotal for me coming to Los Angeles. He had an art gallery here called Show Cave back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Show Cave. How cool. Right on.
Yeah, him and I have been putting these books together.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So what came after Mask Garden?
Then we have the Binding the Devil, which is going into the satanic panic vibe a little bit of the 80s, but then also has a lot of continuation of the witchcraft paperbacks, but delving more into the nonfiction element to it. So
cool.
I'll have like a Drawing Down the Moon first edition, or like Doreen Valente is in there. We have some Louise Huebner books.
Awesome. So awesome. And then your most recent book.
We have The Occult Eye, which is really a deep dive into Gnostica and a lot of the new religious movements of the 1930s, like the I Am movement, which the iconography of these are, I would almost say, like Barbie doll-esque.
Yeah.
With flaming swords and emanating light, and they're these very angelic, very bizarre, almost like the Bill Keane big-eyed paintings, but psychedelic angel magic. I guess.
So fucking cool.
Yeah.
I love all of them. I can't get enough of them. I find them to be such a pleasure and such an education too, because they really do reflect the word trend is such an annoying word, but the different, we'll just say movements or the different bodies of interest that start popping up at these different times in history too. It's a real reflection of culture and gender and magic and all of it. I think it's so, so intriguing. Which of these has been the most fun for you to work on?
Oh, man. It's almost like a series. They've all been fun. They've all shown me insight into not only my own collection, but also each one has led us down different rabbit holes of research. I find really interesting. And we'll discover a paperback in my collection that is referencing something in the Gothic romance book. And then that has an element to a book in Binding the Devil. So they're all pretty much the same language that they're speaking to each other.
So cool. On that note, we're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. I've got a really special new offering for you all, and that is new Witch Wave ceremonial soap, which has been made in collaboration with my favorite soap company, 2 et al. 2 et al. Makes soap and skincare using traditional alchemical techniques to transform pure water and plant-based ingredients into beautiful, handcrafted, cold-processed soaps, which are also magically charged. These soaps are beyond bewitching and luxurious, and after being a hardcore fan of them for a while, I knew I wanted to collaborate with them, and I am so thrilled that they agreed. I'm overjoyed to now offer Witch Wave Soap by 2 et al., available now exclusively in the Witch Wave shop over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. 2 et al. Founders Matthew and Natalie and I put our heads together to come up with a special soap blend that is deeply magical just for you. The Witch Wave blend incorporates such intentional ingredients as black salt for cleansing and protection, yarrow to aid in divination and love, and mugwort, also known as artemisia, for lunar connection and visionary insights. It's also blended with the most beautiful fragrant oils, including frankincense, which smells incredible and also helps amplify connection with the divine. We were invoking deities like Artemis and Hecate when designing the ingredients of the soap, as well as the packaging. You'll note the skeleton key on the side. And this soap can be used whenever you want to ready yourself for ritual work or simply as a daily ceremonial practice to help you cleanse and recenter into your own magic. So go ahead and order Witch Wave Soap by 2 et al. And me over at witchwavepodcast.com/shop. And if you want to check out 2 et al.'s other incredible alchemical soap blends and skincare, you can do so at 2etal.co. That's TUETAL.co, and use offer code WitchWave15 for 15% off your order from the 2 et al. Website. So once again, you can get our new exclusive Witch Wave soap from the Witch Wave shop, and you can get 15% off other 2 et al. Offerings from their site, 2etal.co, with offer code WitchWave15. I am obsessed with Zoo's incense, which is why I am so excited to announce that I have partnered with them on an exclusive Witch Wave incense blend just for you. The Witch Wave blend is inspired by Artemis, goddess of the moon, the hunt, the wild. It contains sandalwood, orris root, myrrh, black storax, mugwort, ambrette seed tincture, and organic ylang-ylang essential oil. And I cannot tell you how fun and magical it was to collaborate with the folks from Zoos and come up with this blend for you. You can order your Witch Wave incense blend by going to witchwavepodcast.com/shop, and you'll see it there. And this is a small batch, limited edition, so we'll see how long it lasts. I also want to encourage you to go to Zoos' site and order their incense from them directly because they are so incredible. They have 9 incense blends currently available, and they are handmade and hand-rolled, all natural, and all of their ingredients are organic or wild-crafted and made with whole plants, seeds, roots, woods, tree resins, and tinctures. Zoos also offers hand-cast, concrete burners, charcoal, raw aromatics like frankincense and myrrh, and incense supplies. Check it all out at zoosincense.com, and if you use promo code WitchWave, you'll get 10% off. So that's right, you've got 2 places to go. One is witchwavepodcast.com/shop to get our exclusive Artemis-inspired Witch Wave incense blend. And you can get everything else over at zoosincense.com. That's ZOUZ incense.com, and use offer code WitchWave for 10% off everything else. Thank you, Zoos. Hi, Witch Wavers. I have exciting news. At long last, we have some new Witch Wave merch available for you now through TeePublic. We decided to go with TeePublic for our new Witchwave merch because it is a print-on-demand site, which means you can get different variations of the Witchwave logo printed on t-shirts, mugs, totes, stickers, magnets, notebooks. Oh my gods, the sky's the limit. And the shirts come in different styles and fabrics and colors and are available in sizes small through 5XL, so you can order whatever you'll feel you're most magical in. So head on over to witchwavepodcast.com/shop. Welcome back to the Witchwave. Today I'm speaking with Astraleyes. So, my friend, what is next for you in this series of occult paperback books? I understand you have a Kickstarter on the horizon. Where is the project going from here?
It's been interesting. Since starting Bibliomancers, it's connected me to a lot of the community on levels that I hadn't had before. So I actually just got hired to do creative direction on a music video that I can't say who it is yet, but it's coming out very soon. It's been opening these doors up to more of creative developments, which is interesting too.
That's so cool. Ooh, I can't wait to hear who that is.
Another very exciting thing that is actually coming January 14th to Kickstarter. I'm working with, I think you know Tom Nagovin from Century Guild.
Yeah, he was on an episode of Witchwave Plus, so a bonus episode. He was talking about his beautiful Mooka book, which is so gorgeous. He sent me one. I was like, damn, you're generous, my friend. Yeah. It's so stunning.
Beautiful.
So you're partnering with them. Oh, how perfect.
Yeah, they're basically taking our first 5 books and we're making expanded editions. With
nice.
hardcover.
Yes.
We're working with Dawn Aquarius. She's a local illustrator here. She'll be doing basically like a 5-volume wraparound cover. And then Tom is going in and writing some text for them too, some context.
That's so fucking cool. Oh my goodness. Sign me up. So this is a Kickstarter. It's launching in a couple days, January 14th. And are there certain like tiers and prizes and all that?
There'll be all sorts of wild stuff.
Goodies.
All sorts of goodies. Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm so there. Congratulations on that. And do you know when the project will be published, or it depends on the funding?
I'm not certain the time frame yet, but we're basically going to do consecutive books one after another. So probably by November of 2025, the 5th book will be out.
So cool.
It's been an interesting process, Pam. Like the Museum of Witchcraft in Cornwall had contacted me, and we have our books there, and it's just exciting to see not only the esoteric and magic community supporting it and finding it interesting, but this is an access point. I work at Skylight Books too, so I see it just average folks that don't have any connectivity to magic or witchcraft are finding, some access to it. I'm hoping it's also this beacon.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it strikes me that horror movies feel like they're more popular than ever.
Yeah.
But, those films, my understanding is that the real horror explosion, there were movies like Dracula, all of that, but the real horror movies didn't come into the fore until around the same time as these paperbacks. I think it was like the 70s that the horror film movement really started exploding too. And it feels like between that, I'll put Dungeons and Dragons on the list. There's so many like bands that got really into like the occult and psychedelia in the 60s and 70s. It all feels like these are portals. And it's funny, a lot of people will tell me that they got into witchcraft because of like a Led Zeppelin album or because of like a movie or something. Right. And there's no wrong way to enter into this world as far as I'm concerned. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like pop culture. Sure, you can enjoy it on the surface, and that's plenty for plenty of people because it's fun and cool and aesthetically engaging. But for some people, this might be a doorway for them to walk through in terms of practice. What is your relationship like these days with, I'll just broadly say, magic?
It's interesting. Like, I am a firm believer in magic, and I go through these moments, and I mean, I see it having some perspective now where in my early teens, I just jumped in head first, not knowing what I was doing. And it just completely destroyed me.
Mm.
And I was a burnout in this sense where it's almost like the oath of the abyss, like you said, be careful what you wish for. And if you're not prepared to give the proper respect and real estate in your spirit to imbibe and allow the communing of these spirits in you, it will break you apart. And that's fine as long as you have tools to deal with that. And so I go through these waves where I'll just be surrounded in magic, and everything I see, there's the synchronicities.
Oh, yeah.
But then you have to be careful, because then that squirrel that just crossed your path, like carrying that little piece of stick, is leading you down this doorway. And you know what I mean? Then everything becomes these signals.
Yeah, it can be crazy making. Let's just say, like, you can lose your grip on reality. And
Exactly.
it's important to have foundational tools and grounding. And I think to be really rooted in the material world and in your body and not totally lose yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm in a stage now where the magic for me is making this deadline and putting this energy and effort into this project and showing up and being there for, if I make a commitment to something, I'm showing up, I'm being there, I'm putting in my time and energy with people and projects. And that's creating this community and showing up for the community and participating in it.
Ah.
And I feel like that's a practice of magic that for myself was overlooked, where it's these small micro magics that you can do. It's not just about this grandiose, summoning. It's also, hey, I'm going to do this nice thing for this person, or I'm going to be present here.
Yeah. I think that's so beautiful. And I think it's that orientation towards magic and community building and kindness that we need more than ever, especially going into this new year, let's be honest. So I so appreciate that that's where you're coming from right now.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. So listen, Astraleyes, in our last few minutes together, you are the first interview I'm doing for the new year for 2025.
Wow.
You're a magic maker. You're a manifester. Is there anything that you would like to speak into reality now in terms of intentions that you're setting for yourself, for your community, for the world? I just wanted to open the floor for you.
Oh, thank you, Pam. I'm a firm believer in intention and magic, and the community that you have built is amazing. I was going through your Witch Wave, and it was almost like you're building your fantasy like dream team for, warriors or magicians. So I would just say that the more we unite, the more we come together, the more our communities link arms, the more that the forces that are working against us, these evil fucking forces that are about ready to roll in, won't have a chance against us. And I feel the only way to do that is to unite. So I feel like 2025 is all about uniting.
So mote it be. What a beautiful, powerful note to end on. And I'll just put the intention out there that I hope I have the opportunity to link arms with you in the material world someday soon. It would be so great to meet you in person. I
Likewise.
Just so enjoyed this conversation. I'm such an admirer of all the different projects you do. And I'm just so grateful you took the time to be here. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's it for the show. Thank you again to Astraleyes for sharing his opulent occult iconography with me. Do you have questions, feedback, need some witchly advice, or just want to share something magical that happened to you recently? Drop us an email or voice message over at witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you just might make it on the Witch Wire. The Witch Wave is a Phantasmophile production written and produced by me, Pam Grossman. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Josh Wilcox and or Walter Nordquist and myself. Our theme music is the song Hand and I by Lycanthia. Our new Witchwave logo was designed by Thunderwing. Special thanks go to Matt Freeman, Laura Antal, and Cece Pascal. You can check out information about this and other episodes on our website, and now buy Witchwave merch at witchwavepodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at witchwavepod, and you can check out my witch emoji for iPhone by going to witchemoji.com or downloading it in the App Store. My books Waking the Witch from Gallery Books and Witchcraft from Taschen are available everywhere now. And if you want more Witchwave or you would just like to support the show, please join us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witchwave. Thank you so much for listening. Witches are the future. I'll catch you next time on The Witchwave.